Successfully streaming live on YouTube. This is the flight plan. Thank you for joining us, Tim McMaster, along with Zack Rosenblatt. It only took us 2 episodes to figure out how to do this streaming thing on a new platform. Excited to be with you. Hopefully, everybody has gotten those overreactions out of their system, all the bad vibes from Monday night. Time to get back at it. Trip to Nashville for the Jets this weekend. A very winnable game against the Tennessee Titans. We're going to talk about that game. We'll talk about overreacting. We'll hear from Aaron Rodgers, Nick Bosa talking from the Niners locker room and downplaying the Jets a little bit. We'll talk about that. And Zack had a huge story that came out on Monday about Aaron Rodgers' hometown of Chico, the connection between the quarterback and where he grew up. We'll give kind of the color and backstory around that and get to our picks. So a lot to get to. Hopefully you're cruising through your week like a Waymo through the streets of San Francisco. Right, Zack?
Yes, I went on a self-driving car. I went in a self-driving car 2 or 3 times in San Francisco. We were talking about it off pod, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I would say, just to get the nonsense out of the way here in the beginning, non-Jets. But I was in San Francisco. I was going around town with Connor Hughes and Andy Vasquez, who both covered the Jets, obviously. And Connor was very adamant about doing it because he enjoyed it very much. But I don't know. So a short drive with it is fine, but sitting in the back seat without somebody in the driver's seat, driving around, kind of hitting the brakes a lot, which I get it. They're being safe, which is good. It's like trippy and it's cool, but it's like I don't need to do it personally. I don't know. Maybe if I did it more often, I would get used to it. I went on one in Arizona before. It was kind of the same thing. I was like, all right, that was cool. I don't need to do that again. Then I did it a few more times this trip, but it was it's a very interesting experience. You said you've done it before too?
Yeah, well, first of all, supposedly they're testing in New York, and that just feels terrifying.
I was literally talking about that with somebody. Like, there's no way that's a good idea. There's so many wild cards in New York. You got crazy drivers, people walking into the street out of the blue. That is a recipe for disaster.
But speaking of like so many things that could happen, when I rode one, and this was just a few weeks ago, I was out in San Francisco for work as well, and suddenly we're getting close to the hotel, and the Waymo pulls down an alley. I guess a shortcut to the hotel. We were like, well, we would have taken the main road, but pulls down this tight alley. And on the left side of the alley is a pile of like kind of dumpster, trash barrel type things. And on the right side, there's actually human beings like sitting on the sidewalk, and clearly in no mood to move in any way, like just there. And so the Waymo slows down to like 1 mile an hour and it's inching along. And it somehow navigates between the trash barrels and the people. Yeah. No contact. It kind of won me over at that point that like, okay, this is actually amazing. That said, like, I will not sit in one of those in New York City. No chance.
There's no chance. Well, at one point we were waiting at a light to turn right, and there was like an old lady like pushing a cart like in front of us very slowly. It felt like something out of a movie. And I was my heart rate went up a little bit. I'm like, oh, for the love of God, please do not drive forward. But luckily, it clearly has like sensors or something because.
Well, and you can see it on the screen, right? You can actually see,
it like shows it.
Somebody's walking their dog, and you can see on the dashboard screen like the little dog like walking next to the.
I'd say the last time we went to a Mexican restaurant for dinner before, which was very good. But then getting in a car where I felt mildly nauseous was not the best feeling, I would say.
All right. So with that, let's shift things up and let's get into the Jets. We mentioned overreacting. You can always count on Aaron Rodgers to say something interesting, right, in his press. That's what I feel like you missed the most last year, Zach. It was like there was no weekly. Well, there was, but it was on McAfee.
Not in front of us, though.
In the press room where you can ask him questions. So he was asked about overreacting and that kind of thing, and this is what Rodgers had to say.
A lot of people remember you for the relax thing in Green Bay, for overreaction. Is there any parallel to what went down in San Francisco Monday night and to what you have to look ahead forward?
I mean, I think we always got to stay relaxed. It's a long season. I think at times people think the season is like you're out in the prairie or the desert and you're wandering around trying to find water. But it's more like a nice, slow bolero, where we're just swaying with the music and reacting to whatever comes to us and through us, and just trying to not get too high with the highs or too low with the lows. The league is a lot different than when I said relax years ago. in that there's just so much more coverage that there's so much more opportunity for overreaction. So I get it. We want to win. Fans want to win. The organization wants to win. But the process has to be the same. If it's good enough in week one, it's good enough in the playoffs. So we got to stick to the process and the preparation, the way that goes, and trust that it's good enough. Like a nice, smooth bolero.
The Jets are just swaying with the music, Zach.
Yeah, that was a pretty good Aaron Rodgers answer. His point is like week one is the ultimate overreaction. Like everybody's getting too excited about some teams and too panicked about some, and I don't think it's worth panicking about the Jets. I think there are some concerns that we need to see over these next couple weeks if it was a 1 week aberration or not. But he's right. Like just because they looked pretty bad on all around in week one does not mean the season's over. It's easy to jump to that conclusion because it's the Jets, and so I've seen a lot of fans doing that, and I get it because they've been heartbroken so many times before. But yeah, I think the panic can come in the next 2 weeks. If they are not good against the Titans and Patriots, then you should be concerned, and the Broncos even the week after that. These next 3 games, they need to win at least 2 of them, I would say, to feel good about like where this team is going this season. Like I know I think it is going to take them a little bit of time to get into a groove on offense, but if they were ever going to, these next 2 weeks are a good time for it. I think Titans and Patriots do have decent defenses, so it's not like easy, but ask me again after Sunday's game, like if it's time to panic, because if they lose to the Titans, things are going to get real iffy around here. If they beat the Titans and it's like an ugly win, you'll take it, but you'll be like, should we still be concerned? So we'll talk about the game specifics later, but yeah, to Rodgers' point, relax is probably the right tone to take right now, because in New York in particular, when you win, you're amazing. When you lose, it's the apocalypse. That's just kind of how it works.
And there isn't really anything we weren't expecting when you look at the actual record, because a lot of people anticipated there's no way the Jets are going to go out to San Francisco and win the opener on Monday night. Now, you hoped it would be a more competitive game than it was, but the result is the result, and now it's time to move on. And we talked about it on a reaction show. Maybe getting kind of kicked in the teeth a little bit like this is a good thing as far as the team's mindset and realizing that, oh man, if we want to play in the Super Bowl, that team played in the Super Bowl last year. That's what it looks like, and time to get going with that. Speaking of that team that played in the Super Bowl last year,
transition Tim.
Nick Bosa spoke yesterday, kind of looking ahead to the Vikings, who the Niners have this week, but he managed to get in a little shot on the Jets at the same time.
This week, I think we're playing a better, honestly, a better team that's they're playing better football, it looks like, and they run the ball well, and we're gonna have to be better in our techniques. We kind of got away with some things last week, so yeah, we have to hone in and not pat ourselves on the back.
This is a guy that played for Robert Saleh, obviously, when Saleh was the defensive coordinator out there in San Francisco, but didn't care. I felt like a few seconds in, he almost was gonna change the way he was going with the comment and kind of bring it back a little bit, but then he didn't. He just basically said, yeah, we didn't have to play that great on Monday night.
Yeah, it's never great when the Giants are dealing with this, and they have for a couple of years, where whenever their players on another team can't help themselves but criticize, whether preparation skill. The Giants have been dealing with that with Daniel Jones, where it just seems like people are trolling him around the league now. It's like I've never seen anything like it. But yeah, I mean, it's nothing we don't already know. It's just coming from the opponent. Like the 49ers clearly didn't have to be at their best in that game because the Jets were really not prepared for them. And I was more concerned about the opposite side, which is the Jets defense. And if somebody from the 49ers offense had said it, that Bosa said it, when I thought that, Tyron Smith held up fairly well. The O-line in the passing game did well. In the running game, they were really bad. And that's probably what he's alluding to. Yeah, all the same concerns everybody has right now. It's, the lack of creativity on offense with Nate Hackett, which isn't going to change overnight, unfortunately. And the run blocking needs to get better. And the receivers outside of Garrett Wilson and Alan Lazard, I guess, need to do a little more. So Yeah, it's not ideal, especially coming from him, like you said, somebody who has ties to Robert Saleh, and there's a lot of 49ers people in the Jets building. That somebody is saying that about them or subtweeting them like that is not, it's not a great look. But again, like this will all go away if they're good next week. This kind of goes into the overreaction thing. So, part of his point was like the Vikings look like better than the team we just played. Well, the Vikings played the Giants, so if the Jets played the Giants in week 1, they probably would have looked pretty good too, because the Giants might wind up being the worst team in the NFL. Like that's on the table. So
the tape tends to be impacted by the opponent
Yeah.
on the tape, for sure.
I mean, like the Saints aren't going to win the Super Bowl, but they scored 48 points or whatever in week 1. So
All right, one other thing as far as like the news and notes category, and that is a roster change. Does not involve Hassan Reddick, but Connor McGovern on the practice squad. He's back. Just talk about the decision here to bring him back and to add some depth there.
yeah, I kind of figured he would come back at some point. I feel like it probably should have been earlier just to get him acclimated again, because he hasn't been anywhere all summer. But especially once, I mean, they needed interior depth anyway before this, but once Wes Schweitzer went on injured reserve with an injury he suffered in practice, I forget, I'm blanking on what the injury was. Should have that in front of me, but yeah, Wes Schweitzer went on IR before week 1, so he's out for 4 weeks, and so that left basically Xavier Newman as the only backup. They called up Jake Hansen, so they have 2 interior backups up there, but nobody that I feel great about playing center if Joe Tittman were to come out or whatever, or needed to shuffle over to guard or something like that. And just in general, Max Mitchell has some experience at guard now, but Connor McGovern was a starter here for 3 years, didn't miss any games. Last year he got hurt. He started out the year as a starting center, went down. Joe Tittman took over. He was Joe Tittman's mentor. Joe Tittman brings that up constantly. Even while he was hurt, he was helping him out. So he's just a solid player. I think he's a really good backup. He can play guard and center. This is just a no-brainer, and I'm surprised that it took this long. Like maybe they wanted to wait. I mean, he's on the practice squad, so there's no guaranteed contract anyway. I don't get why this wasn't a thing in week 1, but maybe they were waiting to try him out, see how he looked physically, because he was coming off injury. Maybe he wasn't ready until now. I'm sure we'll see him in the locker room today. But yeah, I mean, it's a smart move. It's the kind of move they needed to make. The depth on the interior is an issue. I would say the depth on the interior of the offensive line and the defensive line are the 2 spots that have the worst depth. So, I don't know if the defensive tackle's up next. And I've seen a lot of fans calling for Al Woods to come back. I don't know how a 36-year-old coming off an Achilles injury is going to look, but I think it's the idea is the run stopping with Lecky Fotu also out. So if Al Woods is healthy, I think it makes sense. But who knows how he looks coming off that injury. It's a little different for guys of that size, that age, than
Yeah, it's
for
different
Aaron
than
Rodgers.
I mean, Rodgers is older, but yeah, a little different when you're
Yeah.
carrying that kind of size. All right, let's get into the Titans specifically. For those who didn't pay attention to the whole league last week, the Titans jumped out big time on the Bears, 17-0, and then completely fell apart. They lose 24-17. They lose to Caleb Williams' Bears when Caleb Williams was terrible. Williams in the game failed to throw for 100 yards, 14-29 for 93 yards, which rookies in their first game in week 1 of an NFL season historically play badly and historically lose. Like the record, I don't have it in front of me, but I think going back to the 90s or early 2000, it's like 117-1 or something about top 10 type picks in their first game.
Wow.
But Williams gets a win because the Titans offense basically handed it over, and special teams, a punt block for a touchdown, a pick 6 by Will Levis, and Levis was not good, 19 of 32, 127 yards. He did have a touchdown, but 2 interceptions. There's a lot of reasons to think this is a great matchup for the Jets, Zack.
Yeah. The Titans offense was on the other day. They were good in the run game. Tony Pollard had a really good game. They signed him this offseason. They have Tyjae Spears behind him. I think they are a pretty good running team. Their offensive line was fine run blocking, but they were really, really bad pass blocking. I think we talked about this on the recap pod a little bit. Peter Skoronski and J.C. Latham both were brutal against the pass, as was Chukwukafor.
Last in pass block win rate
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah, and they gave up a lot of pressure, a lot of QB hits. I think Will Levis maybe holds on to the ball too long, and Jermaine Johnson actually had a interesting quote. He was trying to be complimenting of him, but then he's like, when he gets under pressure and he's, feeling stressed or whatever, like is when he starts to make mistakes, essentially. And the worst one was the pick six that he had late in that game where he's falling down and he just like tries throwing it up and it gets picked off. Apparently Bill Belichick talked about this on, I think McAfee, where he said like, what's the, it was like Bill being critical, which is interesting, but he was like, what's the end game there? Like what the most you're going to get is like a few yards on that play. Cause he was trying to like get somebody nearby, but he was just trying to make a play. And, anyway, like that's the kind of thing that the Jets need to force turnovers. They need to get to the quarterback. On paper, this is a young offensive line in Tennessee, and it's a young quarterback who struggles under pressure. I think his EPA per drop back when he was pressured was the worst in the NFL by like a long shot, according to True Media. I was looking that up. And so they need to get to him. They did not get off the blocks very well. Jeff Ulbrich is never going to become an all-out blitzer, but if you're ever going to throw in a couple blitzes, I think this is a good week to do it. Just throw him off, switch guys around, like moving Quinn in, just shuffling guys all around, like doing the kind of things that he did against the Eagles last year, for example, to throw Jalen Hurts off. And Jalen Hurts is way better than Will Levis, but yeah, they need to take advantage of this matchup because I think the Titans' defense is actually not that bad. So I'm going to be curious to see that matchup. But the other side of the ball, yeah, I think the Jets defense, if it was going to have a get-right game, as we've been talking about, like this is the week. Like Jermaine Johnson needs to play better. He did not have a good game. Kinlaw, I think Quinn Williams needs to play better for 4 quarters. And then like, Will McDonald or Michael Clemens, like one of these guys like has to make something happen, or Tack McKinley or like one of these undrafted rookies. Like they need something out of this pass rush because they got absolutely nothing. Sending Quincy Williams on a blitz would not be the worst idea because he's really good at that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because there are a lot of familiar. It's a different coaching staff in Tennessee, but the Jets have a few former Titans coaches, so I'm curious to see how much that helps them in terms of like personnel. Todd Downing, Keith Carter, Tony Deuce. So something to keep an eye on. But yeah, this is a game the Jets absolutely should win, and I don't think it should be close. I think the Titans are better than maybe people give them credit for talent-wise. I mean, they have Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, a bunch of guys on defense, traded for Snead from the Chiefs at corner. But the Jets are a better team, and this is the kind of game like you can say, okay, we ran into a buzzsaw in week 1, Super Bowl contender, but the Titans are not that. Like if you want to be taken seriously, you got to whip their butt.
And I mean, you mentioned Levis holding onto the ball too long and that being a problem for him. I mean, that was the thing on Monday night though, too. Like Brock Purdy has become the ultimate get it out fast kind of quarterback, which was a perfect. Really, the Niners came in with a perfect game plan to face the Jets, and that they gashed them up the middle, and then Purdy gets rid of it really quick. Even though he had time, going by the numbers, he actually had a good amount of time. So it's not like we're not fully letting the Jets pass rush off the hook by saying Purdy got rid of it in time, but it was a factor, and this is going to be a different story unless Will Levis completely changes what kind of quarterback he is between weeks 1 and 2. So, definitely going to be interesting. The Titans defense did play well against the Bears, but we'll see how much of that was the rookie quarterback as well. And it's a little different. Caleb Williams is for all the talent he has, the former Heisman Trophy winner, #1 overall pick. Him under center in his first NFL game versus Aaron Rodgers in his many game, and 20.
And Rodgers, by the way, got rid of the ball faster than anybody in the NFL in week 1. Like I think it was like 2.3 seconds, which. That's
he learned his lessons. He learned his lesson last year.
Yeah, and he was as he mentioned, he was only hit twice. You'll take that any week if your quarterback's only hit twice, and so that's also partially why I was surprised by Bosa a little bit because I thought the offensive line mostly held up well. I think maybe Morgan Moses didn't have an amazing game, and AVT wasn't great in the run game. But I as we talked about the other day, I didn't come out of that game being worried about the O-line, and that's the first time I can say that in a long time.
The Titans also sloppy on special teams. I mentioned the block punt. We'll see if that's something where the Jets can capitalize as well, and see how Brent Boyer's team is aligned this year. It didn't really factor into Monday night, but this is maybe an opportunity to make something special happen on special teams. Anything else on the Titans before we move on to Chico, California?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of like what I want to see from the Jets, we already talked about the D-line. They need to spread the ball more. I'd like to see Tyler Conklin getting way more involved in the offense. Rodgers, this was literally the first time Rodgers only completed passes to 3 guys. I don't think that's going to happen again. Get
And
Tyler Conklin.
when they hit Conklin late, and it wasn't even Rodgers, I think.
Yeah, it was
Taylor,
Tyrod,
right?
yeah.
Completed a pass to him late. And the first thing I thought of was our over-unders that we did.
Not
and
off
you
to a good
had
start, yeah.
Conklin over 60 catches, I think. And I was like,
Off to a good start.
path.
Yeah. It was a weird game. But yeah, I'd like to see him more involved. I think pretty clearly they're not going to get Mike Williams all that involved yet. But get Conklin more in the mix. I think bringing Braylon Allen in for some short yardage stuff wouldn't be the worst thing. Get him a little over groove. They do tend to be slow play with young guys. And Xavier Gipson was on the field a lot, and he didn't really get even looked at. So I like manufacturing some touches for him because he's pretty explosive. I don't think it would be the worst thing. Then on the other side, I'd like to see a little better tackling. Ashton Davis and Chuck Clark didn't have the best games, I would say, and Tony Adams even too. Sauce Gardner was great. I think DJ Reed was mostly fine. But they need to tackle better. They need to get to the quarterback, and they need to make look, like Nathaniel Hackett on offense he's just never going to be creative. Like they're going to do the stuff that infuriates fans, but you have Rodgers to kind of save it with, his changes at the line and, the free plays and things like that. But like they air it out a little more. Don't do run pass. Like don't telegraph what you're going to do every play is all I would ask. And I'm sure the Jets fan base would agree.
Reed and Michael Carter, I've both banged up on Monday.
Yeah.
Both should be, it sounds like, good to go for Sunday.
Yeah. Carter like aggravated his ankle, so he would have been limited. They did a walkthrough yesterday. DJ Reed, I think he had some knee soreness. Solid said he's not concerned, and I know the joke is always when Solid says that the opposite is true, but I think they should be okay for this week.
All right, so you took a trip, and this goes back to the beginning of the show when we talked about the way. Oh no, I guess you were in the Waymo for the game, not the previous trip, because you had gone out.
Okay, I podcasted from an unknown location. Yeah,
unknown location, which turned out to be. Were you in Chico at that point? Was that?
I was in my hotel room in Chico, and so people in the Discord, I did tease that this story was coming. So if you're not on the Badlands Discord, you should consider signing up for it because there's a lot of fun in there. But yeah. This is an idea I had earlier this year about, Aaron Rodgers obviously has a reputation of like there's a high, his approval rating has gone way down since COVID, mainly because he says his opinion and there's people that what Aaron's opinions are about these things, they are passionately on the opposite side and they decide that he's a bad guy because of it and all that stuff. And whenever he talks or all the controversies that, some of them he started, some that have been overblown. Like there's just basically my idea was like I want to go to his hometown and see what they think of him because you can really find out a lot about somebody if you go and talk to the people that knew him when he was growing up and things like that. And as I was there and as I was researching for the story, you start to uncover just how charitable and kind he's been to his community, even though he hasn't been there in a long time. And I think part of that's the complicated relationship he has with his parents, which I didn't think was relevant to this story. I had some people asking me about that. But even though he's not physically been there, he's been showing up for them for a long time. And so I always try to write stories about people, what makes them tick, where they come from, try and show them in a different light than everybody's like making assumptions about them. I've been doing that as long as I've been doing this job. And so I didn't go there with any agenda or bias. And I came out of there with...
I know no agenda or bias, but did you go in expecting the amount of just Aaron Rodgers love there, or did you think it would maybe be a little more split or?
Yeah, I expected it to not be like, I was trying to talk to as many people as I could and not like seeking out people who didn't like him, but like trying to find people who like had the opposite opinion. And most of the people there are like, I don't really care about that. Even if they disagreed with him, they're like, I don't really care about that. I care about how he's helped me. And that's, 159 businesses that he helped save during the pandemic. Like he paid for their rent and utilities for like 3 months in the middle of when they were getting no business. And, the $3 million he's donating to this cancer center that's being built right now. And not only did and he's not just donating the money, by the way, he's like very involved in the process. And that was kind of the thing that surprised me the most. And through all these forest fires, he's come to bat for Chico like over and over and over again in the area. And, people just have stories from when he was younger and how he, was good to them and stuff. And I'm sure there are people who have the opposite side. I just wasn't able to find that. And anyway, I think, people are complicated. Aaron Rodgers, as much as anybody, I think it's fair if you don't like him because of, whatever, for whatever reason, like the way he acts or the way he talks. But I also think it's important to say that people aren't just what they say on TV. And so that's Aaron Rodgers, to his credit, has never really sought out attention for a lot of the community stuff that he does. And to the point where I talked to his high school coach, and he's like, there's some things that he doesn't want me sharing with anybody, and so I'm going to keep them to myself. But what I can tell you is, he paid for our travel when we went to the state championship, and he buys our rings every time we win the championship. He sends us videos when we're in the playoffs. Like he just keeps in touch, and he didn't play for that coach. It's a different coach, and so it was just interesting going to this little corner of California in the Sacramento Valley. It's not easy to get to. I had to fly into Sacramento, rent a car, drive an hour and a half just to get to Chico. And so as I'm doing that, I'm like, okay, I kind of get why when he was in high school, he wasn't getting recruited really because coaches just weren't willing to drive that far or like go out of their way to go to this little town, this little farm town where they don't really play against great competition and all that stuff. So, I just try to go to all the stops along his life route. I went to his high school, his junior college, went to some of his favorite restaurants and bars just from researching and talking to people I knew that were his favorites. And people who lived in Chico, they were not only happy to help to talk about him, but they were excited that somebody was in their town to show what Chico was like. And so it was cool. I had some great meals. Fifth Street Steakhouse in Chico is one of the best steaks I've had. Frankly, there's a great burger joint that he loves called Burger Hut that I went to. Great barbecue spot called Smoke and Moe's. Burger Hut and Smoke and Moe's are two places he donated to. Went to a coffee shop that he helped save. I walked around town, I saw the list of a lot of the names of the places, and as I'm walking around downtown, that place he saved, that place he saved, that place he saved, that place. Like it was pretty remarkable. So that was ultimately my biggest takeaway. And I get, you go in the comments on the story, it's like a pretty even mix of people who are like, I know what you showed a different side of Aaron Rodgers, thank you, and the other side of it is like F you for writing this puff piece about him, and F Aaron Rodgers for his opinions about the vaccine and all that stuff, which I get the passion, but my whole purpose of the story was just to write about what people think about him in his hometown, and that I feel like I did my job doing that.
It does make you wonder, right? Like there's plenty of towns that you go to now that I visited for different reasons since COVID, and you walk around downtown and it's like boarded up windows there and this place is closed here. And gee, I wonder what this downtown area was like in 2019 as opposed to now. And it sounds like in Chico it's the same, and a lot of it is because of Aaron Rodgers. So, and the other comments in your story, I think, were like, well, if I had that much money, I would donate a ton of it too. Which, you know what? Maybe that's true, but maybe it's not. I don't,
yeah,
you know
but also,
I don't know. Everybody's a little different.
And the point I tried to make in that story, and I think that generally, like, you do see famous people who have a negative PR donate some money to get people to like them. Like, if you read the details in the story, which I'm sure a lot of those people didn't, it's not that he was just donating money. Like for the saving the COVID businesses, they all sent in applications. He watched every video. And then before each call where he surprised them to tell them he was paying them, he like read up on all their problems they were having and everything about their business. A lot of the places he knew from growing up, and like the hospital, he donated $3 million. He got on a call with them for an hour and basically like explained all the things that he's passionate about in terms of like cancer treatment, which is like the supportive care or the aftercare. Like after, you're in remission, and then all of a sudden they don't really have anything more for you. And that's kind of like one of the things he was passionate about. And he talked about it with them. And the forest fires, every time that's happening, he calls, her name's Alexa Benson Valvanis, I believe. She runs the North Valley Community Fund, our foundation. And he'll call her and be like, what do you need from me? And they'll try to allocate whatever money he's willing to donate to the areas that are underfunded. And so it's not like he's just like, here's some money, do with it what you want. He's like, here's the money I'm donating, and I'd like to talk about how we can best use this money to impact the community. And I think that's, that's what makes it different. Like, look, like I said, I don't think you need to like Aaron Rodgers, but I think it's important to acknowledge that people are complicated, and just because he does or says something you don't agree with doesn't necessarily mean he's like a bad person at the end of the day.
Yep. One other thing that stood out to me, a lot of those places have been around a long time, and the Fifth Street Steakhouse that you mentioned, that I guess he got a seat at a table post prom, which was a big deal because at the time there was only like 17 tables in the entire restaurant, but the owner was looking out for him, and I think he helped that owner out at some point, and it's expanded, it's bigger now. But he actually has a wine locker at the steakhouse, like his own private wine locker at the steakhouse with a key. And at one point he went back and he actually kept the key, and the owner was saying nobody actually keeps the key.
Yeah, it's like it's more ceremonial, and he's like, I got it right here. Yeah. And then something that didn't get into the story, like just tied to how much people there like him, is that I heard from multiple people separately that like didn't have any ties to each other, that so Chico's like drivable from Lake Tahoe. I think it's probably like 5-hour drive or something like that. And so every year he does that celebrity golf tournament that he's in Tahoe. So people from Chico will go and he'll spot somebody he recognizes in the crowd, like a teacher from Pleasant Valley High School or Mike Weir, who owns Fifth Street Steakhouse, and he'll like invite their kids onto the course of Waka Hole with him. And Mike Weir has like over the years would have Aaron take a photo with his daughter each year just to like show the like progression and stuff. So he still loves Chico even if he hasn't been back there in a while. And I think I'm sure one day, funny thing, it's one of the guys I talked to called it like a boomerang effect. It's like everybody who leaves Chico winds up coming back for whatever reason. Everybody just winds up back home. Just like one of those towns that pulls you back. And so maybe one day, I think everybody I talked to in town, they didn't really want to talk about the familial stuff he has going on, but I think a lot of them are like, I think he's going to come back one day. I think they'll hash it out and all that stuff. So I think Chico, he is more famous than he's ever been in terms of when he goes back there. So I think when he's in town, it might be hard for him to not get noticed and bombarded by people. It's a college town, so there's a lot of college kids and stuff like that. But I haven't done a story like that in a while where I actually like physically went to a person's town. A lot of times it's over the phone. And the Athletic asked me, like, would you rather do this over the phone or do you want to go? I'm like, I'd rather go because I think face-to-face, especially for a story like this where I can kind of set the scene, is the way to do it.
Yeah, if you haven't sat in the restaurant and walked the streets, it's just not as good a story. And not to get all, like, big picture journalism here at the end of the podcast, but, like, that's one of the big problems, right, with like the state of journalism now, is that like it's just hard to go and do that. But it's pretty cool that the Athletic allows you to do it, because nowadays, with the ability to talk to people in so many different ways, it's easy to take the cheap route and just like talk to a bunch of people on the phone, but like the story is not as good and it's not as believable either. And I think like walking the streets makes a big difference. So that's pretty cool. All right, should we do picks?
Yeah, as you pull it up, I'm going to go run and get my laptop charger so my computer doesn't die. So talk to the crowd for like a second. I'm a disaster, I know.
All right, this is live streaming at its best. As Zack runs away, he was supposed to fill as I figured out how to get this up. But here we go. All right, the picks are back. The group isn't as big as it was a year ago. I think we may have done a bad job of telling people about the pool, but you can still get in absolutely and climb your way back. Obviously, 1 week down. If we had, honestly, Zack,
I'm back.
I don't know how you feel about this, but part of me feels like if we had like 30 people sign up between now and Sunday, we should just like scrap week one. And go ahead with like 50 people instead of the 20 people. I'm sure that would annoy people, but I'm in first place and I'm okay with it. So
yeah, I think that we want to, everybody who's listening to this either live on Thursday or when the pod goes up later, sign up for our pool. Tim will put it in the show notes on YouTube. We like getting more, and we'll give a prize of some sort at the end of the season. We forgot to bring this up last week, which is probably why the numbers aren't as good. But it's fun. We do this every year, and as we get deeper in the season, we like to bring on the people who are doing really well. So you can be a guest on our pod as well.
Yeah, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the standings. I'll rattle them off a little bit if you are not watching. But I'm in first place, as I mentioned, tied with Mr. Slippery. We were both 7 of 10. What we're doing this week to eliminate the problem we had last year, which was people forgetting about the Thursday game, because last year we picked every single game all year. And you just forget about it on a Thursday. It's a busy day. You don't get the pick in and you lost out. So this year it's just picking 10 games a week. So if you do forget Thursday, you can still get your 10 games in. I had 7, so did Mr. Slippery. A slew of people with 6, Martin 2, Joe 2356, DJ Mulligan 423, Ryan T. Ryan. So that's where we are after 1 week. And then if we take a look at this week's picks, let's go through them a little bit, Zach. We'll just pick a couple. This is what we tend to do, not go through them all. These are my actual picks that you're seeing on the screen, but, we'll just talk about a few of them. If you steal my picks, you're probably in. That's probably not good for you. So, but I have Miami over Buffalo. Are there a couple that you want to focus in on? We'll get to the Jets, obviously, and pick that one as well.
Yeah, we'll get to the Jets game. There were a couple interesting ones. I have Washington -2.5. I think they might beat the Giants, and if they do, then it's going to be chaos in New York. Daniel Jones.
The Giants are officially really bad.
Daniel Jones might get benched already, and Daboll's going to be his seat's going to be feeling very warm. I have Dallas -6.5. It is a little high, but I don't think the Saints are as good as they looked against the Panthers
I took
last
that
week.
one too. Yep.
Yeah, and then another one I liked, I put Indy -3.5. I mean, the Packers are playing Malik Willis at quarterback, so I'm not really confident in that. And I think the Colts have some talent. Anthony Richardson he's like, I don't really have a good comparison for him, but he's either throwing the best throw you've ever seen of all time, or he cannot hit a receiver that's right in front of him. So he's a very entertaining quarterback, and I think that'll be a game that they should win. Those are the ones that jumped out to me immediately, and I think the Eagles should beat the Falcons pretty good on Monday night also.
Obviously, Miami, Buffalo, huge implications as far as the division and the Jets. I went Miami mostly because they're home, -1.5. At home means, Buffalo maybe on a neutral site would be favored. What do you think of that one?
Miami, Buffalo. Yeah, it's. That should be a pretty down the middle game because those are two teams that they had weird first games where they kind of started off slow and then came back and won. Both are pretty talented. I feel better about the Bills, probably. But yeah, I don't really have a good feel for that game. If I was going to predict, I'd probably predict the Bills, but I don't say that with a lot of confidence. I mean, the Dolphins have maybe more emotionally motivated after all the Tyreek Hill stuff. It seems like that's been a big topic this week. So if they can use that to spur something on, and Mike McDaniel's a good coach, I think. I know some people are down on him, but I think he's a good coach. So I could see them coming out with a little extra fire, but Buffalo, I think, is the better team. So that'll be an interesting one, especially it's tonight. Yeah, I didn't realize that was a Thursday game. That'll be good.
Yeah, it's a good one. Good one on Thursday night.
Yeah.
All right, and let's talk about the Jets game with the spread as part of it. A lot of big spreads this week, actually.
Yeah.
Over six plus type spreads, and for good or bad, I actually took some of those favorites. Like you, Dallas. I took the Niners, who are 6-point favorites at Minnesota, which is just stupid taking a road dog like that, but whatever, or a road favorite. All right, Jets -4. I'm taking the Jets.
Yeah, I have the Jets -4. If I'm predicting a score, I'd say Jets 24, Titans 14. I think the Jets should win this game by double digits. I don't say it with a lot of confidence based on what we saw in Week 1, but I think they'll be more ready to play. I think Jeff Ulbrich will do a better job adjusting this week, and I think Will Levis. This defense has been really good against young quarterbacks. C.J. Stroud is the best example last year. They destroyed him. He had his worst game of the season. So if Will Levis lights his team up, then we are officially in panic button territory.
Then we can panic.
Yeah. But the Jets are better. The Titans, like I said, I think the Titans are better than people give them credit for. I think they're going to be a competitive team this year, but not a playoff team. So this is one the Jets need to win, and not just win by like a field goal. They need to win it. So.
Yeah, those have been so rare in recent years, right?
Yeah.
It seems like even the wins are a struggle. I'm going to say 21-10, so I'll say double digits as well. I just don't think that Titans offense is going to do much. All right. closing thoughts before we say goodbye.
Yeah, just to quote Aaron Rodgers, it's okay to relax after week one. If you want to start
Just
panicking,
sway with the music, man.
wait until after this week. I am excited for Nashville. It's one of my favorite cities in the NFL. I love it quite a bit. I'm going to Friday a day early, and great food city, great. Downtown is so much fun. The music scene is great. You can get live music pretty much anywhere, even if you don't stay in the same parts. There's some areas of town that are really cool. I love Hattie B's hot chicken, and I always need a nap after I eat there, but I can't resist it. It's so good. So we'll see. I don't do great with fried food generally, but I think I'm gonna suck it up and do it this week. And if any of you guys are going, let me know, and maybe we can meet up with some flight plan listeners or people on Badlands, because Nashville is a cool place, and so I'm hoping it's a good turnout.
Yeah, as far as NFL trips, I was just gonna say mid-September, Nashville.
Perfect. Yeah.
Doesn't get much better than that. It is Main Street, right?
Broadway, it's called.
Broadway, sorry.
Yeah.
Broadway is gonna be. There'll be people out and about. And last time I was there was the NHL draft, and it was people everywhere.
Yeah.
They had a stage.
Although it
set
is
up in the
supposed
middle of
to
Broadway.
rain this weekend, and so that could be a factor on Sunday if it is rainy that day. So something to keep in mind.
There you go. All right, that's going to do it for us. We will be back next week on Monday with a reaction show. If you caught this week's, it'll be the same thing. Go back and check out this week's if you haven't. We call it 4 Downs, where basically we're just going to pick apart 3 or 4 things that happen in the game and get Zach's reaction from the locker room as well, and what he heard from the players. So check that out on Monday, and then we'll be back with a full episode later in the week. If you haven't checked out Badlands, do that. You can subscribe. You can listen to us even if you're not a paying subscriber, but definitely consider it. All the great products they have going on over there, and check us out as we continue to build this thing. Thanks for all the subscribers to the YouTube channel. We're almost at 1,000. It would be awesome if next week we're talking and we're over 1,000 subscribers. I think we were over 5,000 on the old feed, so we're quickly catching up on a brand new home, and that's pretty cool. So we appreciate everything you're doing out there to listen to us and watch us, and we will talk to everybody soon.